Hey guys, welcome back to Office Hours with the Professor, the show where I say things. Today we're going to talk about China's very first written documents, the Oracle Bones. I talked a little about this in another video, but I'd like here to go into a little more detail since this is such a really important development in Chinese history. Okay, so back during the Shang Dynasty, all right, remember the Shang Dynasty, which ruled around 1500 BC. Alright, sometime around then. So the Shang were at their power sometime around the middle of the second millennium BC. Okay, and at this time, the primary mode of written communication would have been written symbols on these thin slips of bamboo, and they were applied with a brush and ink. Okay, so although bamboo decomposes easily, well, first of all, let's just write that down briefly because that's important. So bamboo. We would write these documents onto these little slips of bamboo, and we would bind the slips of bamboo together with string to make a kind of scroll. Okay, it's really cool. It's really interesting the way these things were made, but the problem is that bamboo decomposes, right? So we are fairly confident that this medium existed during the Shang period, but we just don't have any physical bamboo documents to prove it, okay? Fortunately, however, there are references to bamboo documents made on these, as we call them, oracle bones, which are these animal scapulae that are inscribed with ancient Chinese writing. Okay.
You can stick that claim. Good work is the key to good fortune. Winners take that praise, losers seldom take that blame. If they don't take that game, and sometimes a winner takes nothing, we draw our own designs, fortune has to make that brain. We go out in the world and take our chances. Fate is just a weight of circumstances. That's the way that Lady Luck dances. Roll the bones. Roll the bones. Why are we here? Because we're here. Roll the bones. Roll the bones. Why does it happen? Because it happens. Roll the bones. Roll the bones.
And without these oracle bones, we would never have recovered documentary evidence of the Shang Dynasty, and they would probably still be considered mythological to this day. Okay, so fortunately, somewhere down the line, they got the idea of incorporating writing into their divination rituals. Now, in ancient China, if you wanted to consult your ancestors for advice, then you asked them by a process called scapulomancy. Okay? And what is that? That sounds weird. Let's check it out. And plastromancy. Okay? So you would consult your ancestors for advice by either scapulomancy or plastromancy. Of course, scapulomancy means divination involving the scapula, that is the shoulder blade of an animal. Okay, whereas plastromancy is divination using a plastron, that is a turtle shell. Okay, and in these rituals, the diviner would ask the ancestors a question and then take the bone or the shell and put it on the fire. Okay, the heat would cause it to crack, at which point the diviner would interpret the patterns in the cracks to work out the ancestor's reply. Now, this is an extremely ancient practice, deeply ingrained in Chinese culture, and the first evidence that we have of scapulomancy and plastromancy is from pre-Shang, maybe even pre-Arlito cultures like Longshan, and we talked about Longshan a little while ago. Now, it continued to be practiced throughout Chinese history, scapulomancy and plastromancy. I mean, even surviving, and this is a trip, even surviving into the 1970s in Taiwan. How crazy is that? Really, this tradition was able to continue on of divining using animal bones and turtle shells from the very earliest stages of Chinese civilization in the Longshan culture, clear through until the 1970s. That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. Let's take a minute. You know, I have an overactive imagination. So let's take a minute to imagine what these ceremonies might have been like, okay? So, as we step into this dark temple chamber, our eyes begin to water. Why? Of course, the room is filled with smoke, and it's pouring out from this brazier in the middle of the room. And carved into the brazier is this demonic grinning face. Coals and flames are glowing through its eyes and through its mouth. You know, it's almost as if the smoke is coming out of its mouth, right? And there's this orchestra along the sides of the chamber of bronze bells and gongs, and our senses may be dull from the rhythmic peals of the bells and the effects, perhaps psychoactive, of the smoke filling the room. And through the smoke we can make out two figures. One in silk robes wears a headdress fashioned from a ram's skull, the king. The other, naked and heavily tattooed, is sitting behind the brazier, inhaling the smoke and swaying back and forth. Of course, the oracle, and he's in his shamanic trance, and he chants softly, and with both hands he takes a flat, broad bone from the king, and after passing it over the fire 9 times, he mutters a question for the spirits. Then, in a shower of sparks and smoke, he hurls it into the center of the flame. From the brazier, he pulls this red-hot bronze rod and presses it to the bone. Puck, puck, these sharp cracking sounds ring out over the bells. The spirits have answered. Now, of course, this is just me having fun with my imagination, but the general idea is not too far off. The king would consult an oracle who touched the bones with a hot metal rod to get the answer, because that would cause the bones to crack. Now, as a writing system developed, someone involved in this oracle bone process had a smart idea. They said, hey, let's actually write the questions onto the bones along with a list of possible answers, kind of like a multiple choice test question. Whichever answer the crack touches is going to be the right one. Then, having done this, and of course the actual process I'm sure was much more complicated, but then we file the inscribed and cracked bone into the archives. That way we can look at the bone later as the event that we're asking about approaches. Now, not only was this a cool idea, but it's because of this development that the Shang Dynasty has texts available to us today. Now, admittedly, the corpus of literature that's been preserved isn't exactly page-turning bestseller material. Crack making on Gui Si Day, Chue divined. In the next 10 days there will be no disaster. The king, reading the cracks, said, "There will be no harm. There will perhaps be the coming of alarming news." When it came to the 5th day, ding yo, there really was the coming of alarming news from the west. Zhiguo reporting said, "The Du Fang, a border people, are besieging our eastern borders and have harmed 2 settlements. The Gong Fang also raided the fields of our western borders." Pretty dry stuff, but it does give us a tantalizing glimpse into life at the Shang court. And perhaps most importantly, it shows that both the Chinese language and writing system were in use 3,500 years ago, which is pretty impressive. I think that's, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The China of today and the Chinese people of today have a lot to be proud of, because that's a pretty incredible cultural heritage. Now, furthermore, the names of the royalty recorded on these oracle bones, are an astonishingly close match with those recorded 1,000 years later in records of the Grand Historian, in the Bamboo Annals, in some of these classic Chinese history works. That date from around 2,000 years ago. Now, in my next video, we're going to talk about one of the biggest badasses mentioned in the Oracle Bones, and that, of course, is my homegirl, Fu Hao. So I hope you'll look forward to that. See you next time, everybody.